Last we have.
As a good, that's funny.
Mine's actually not. I'm feel sad about that. Alright, so raise your hand if you think I'm gonna tell a story about drugs. That's pretty much what I expected.
So much mistrust.
I guess I'm following the trend with everybody else's because mine's about my grandfather. So I've always gone down to the border with my family, and we've always visited my grandma. Her name is Celia, and my grandpa, his name is Esteban, and I hate him. I would always go down and he would tell me to do stuff, and I'm like, shut up. Just shut up. He would always say stupid stuff and like complain about things. You know how like in sitcoms where like the drunk guy's on the couch and you know he's like, hey, bring me another beer, or, hey, where's the remote? He was that guy. Even though he didn't drink, he was just naturally lazy. I was like, you know, do something with your life. So, you know, it was around sixth grade, I believe. And we had to do a project on giving interviews. And so I was like, they told us to interview somebody old. And I was like, well, my grandma's old, so I'll interview her. So I called her on the phone. I was doing my interview, and I said, you know, what did you do for a living before now? Because she doesn't work anymore. And she said, well, I used to be a migrant worker. I used to, you know, take your mom and your brothers or your uncles, and you know we would go and pick the fruits and stuff. And I was like, oh, did Esteban help? And I only asked just because I knew I could talk shit if he didn't help. And she said she was like sounded all weird. She was like, no. And I was like, wait, he didn't help you? He made you work? And she was like, no, I hadn't met him yet. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, how did you not meet him? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, you just told me to take my mom and my uncles with you. You can't have kids without a male, if I get that right. And she was like, Esteban's not your grandpa. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And she was like, no, I'm not supposed to tell you this, I guess, since your mom never did, or maybe she just didn't want to or whatever. But she was like, Isaac, what's your name? And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, why are you asking me this stupid question? Like, you just said, Isaac, what's your name? I was like, you know, and she was like, well, what's your full name? And I was like, Isaac Matias Peña. And she was like, that was your grandpa's name. And I was like, Isaac? And she said, no, Matias. And I was like, I guess that makes sense, because I was wondering where the hell that came from, because I've never met anybody in my family named Matias, but they always told me I was named after somebody. And I said, so what happened? And she was like, what do you mean what happened? And I was like, well, I mean, I assume since he's not with us, or, you know, I've never met him on all the years going down there, something happened to him, he must have died somehow. And she said, well, yeah, he died. And I was like, okay, tell me how. And she said, well, your grandpa used to work as a truck driver. And I was like, okay. And she said, he worked with his best friend. And to this day, I still don't know his name. Like, I have no idea what his name is. And I said, okay. And she said, well, they used to go on, you know, shifts together, and they would unload the pallets and the boxes and stuff. And then they drive off and go pick them up and, you know, go drop them off somewhere else. So she said, and your grandpa loved to show off and be manly and macho and shit, so he would go, and he was always the one moving the boxes. And his friend was in the driver's seat, and he must have hit or not parked it correctly or whatever, because on large trucks, you have to hit the parking brake, and you have to put the e-brake down, so that way it doesn't roll. And I don't know what happened. I'm pretty sure somebody does, but it wasn't down, and it rolled back over my grandpa, and that's how he died. And I remember sitting there, and I was like, I was just sitting there, and I had like no emotion, no face, no like nothing. The phone was in my hand, and it was just there. And then for some reason, I ran to my mom, and I gave her a hug, and I was like, I'm sorry, Mom, I know what happened. And I'm like crying and shit now, and my mom's like, "What are you talking about?" Because like she was across the house, and I just come in crying. I'm like, "I know what happened." And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I like go back to my grandma, and then I'm like, well, what happened to my grandpa's friend? And she was like, "Well, he's been in a mental institution since he passed." And I was like, "Wait, he's been in a mental institution?" And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, he killed his best friend, and that's got to mess you up." And I was like, "That's crazy." And I remember my best friend at the time, his name was Gerardo, and I finished the interview or whatever, and then I went to sleep. And I was like, man, if I had ever killed Gerardo, I was like, I don't know what the hell I'd do. Like, I wouldn't kill myself, I wouldn't be mad at myself, I'd just sit for like days and days and days and just be like, I don't deserve to do anything because he can't do anything anymore. And I used to have nightmares and stuff waking up. I used to have nightmares about him dying on accidental things. And they were always like stupid things, like for some reason we were back in like the 1600s or the 1800s where they used to move pianos with the rope and shit. Like, and I was up there and I was like just pulling it and I was like, "Yeah, you're good," and it would drop and I was like, I honestly still don't even know like why the hell I thought that, but I remember actually just about 2 months ago or a month ago, my grandma called me just to check up on me or whatever, because she heard I got a job, and so I was like, "Yeah, I got a new job and it's great and blah blah blah." And she was like, I was like, "Mom or Grandma, what happened to Grandpa's friend?" And she was like, "He's still alive." And I was like, "Okay, well, where is he?" And she was like, he's in a mental institution in Brownsville. And I was like, "Okay." And she said, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, I gotta go visit him." And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Yeah, I gotta go visit him." And she said, she kept telling me, she was like, "No, you can't go visit him." And I was like, "Why not?" And she said, if he meets the person, or if he meets who he killed's grandson, you don't think he's gonna freak out? And I was like, "Well, I mean, yeah, but I'm not gonna walk in there and be like, 'Hi, I'm Matthias' grandson, you killed my grandpa.'" She was like, "Well, then how are you gonna do it?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm not planning on doing it tomorrow. Like, I don't have a plan in place." But I was like, just walk in and, obviously not just stroll in, but like register or whatever. And then go to his room and be like, "Hey, I'm Isaac, just a random guy, come to, just hang out with everybody," and then just hang out with them the whole day. And my grandma was like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, people always tell me you're a reflection of your best friend. Who you are is reflected by your best friend." And so me meeting my grandpa's best friend would be like me meeting my grandfather. And that would mean a lot to me since I don't have grandparents on my father's side either. And so I just started saving up money. I just got my first paycheck on Wednesday. I missed the senior picnic, sorry guys. But I'm saving money so that way I can go down there by myself this summer and go visit him. No, that's my story.